What's going on, guys? No Time to Die is out in US cinemas now. Today is the day where you can finally witness Daniel Craig's fifth and final adventure as James Bond. I saw this a week and a half ago, back on its world premiere day. There were press screenings. They had a press screening here in Boston. And so when it comes to No Time to Die, there is a lot to unpack. There's a lot more to talk about than I thought there was going to be. I was going to do a spoiler review anyway, and I'm going to do 2 spoiler reviews because since there is a lot to unpack with No Time to Die, I want you guys to get my thoughts, and then I want to do a separate spoiler discussion video where I bring other people in who have seen the movie and get their thoughts, especially with certain things that happen in this movie. And I guess I'll preface that by saying we should start by talking about the ending. I wasn't going to jump around in this spoiler review, but the ending is probably going to be the most talked about thing. I was originally planning on starting off by talking with the opening scene with Safin, the main villain, and I'll get to that, but the ending, I think, is going to be the focal point of this movie, because James Bond fucking dies. What? You don't kill James Bond. James Bond always escapes by the skin of his teeth. You killed James Bond? How dare you? Honestly, all jokes aside, I'm actually at peace with the fact that they killed Craig's Bond, but this is going to be the big talking point of the movie. This ending, Bond dying, is what is going to be the most polarizing aspect of the film and is going to cause the rest of the film to be polarizing amongst Bond fans, I believe. It seems like critics are really latching onto the idea of James Bond dying, because I feel like if critics weren't latching onto the idea of James Bond dying, this movie would have been trashed by critics, or at least it would have gotten a lot of mixed reviews, and it has gotten its fair share of mixed reviews, but it's been more on the positive side with people saying it's a satisfying ending to Daniel Craig's tenure, and I gotta agree. But killing off Bond is one of the most polarizing things you could ever do. It's a ballsy move. It's a risky move. And it's a move that is going to be divisive amongst fans and is going to be talked about, I believe, for years to come, at least until they cast the next Bond actor and we see what they're going to do with that actor, which makes me curious. Obviously, like, at the end of the credits, it says James Bond will return, even though Bond is dead. Like, this version of Bond is dead. And casual audiences and casual moviegoers are probably going to be confused the next time another James Bond movie comes out and it's like, oh, hey, here's this person playing James Bond. People are probably going to be like, well, didn't he die in the last one? The way you can look at it is that the first 20 were their own self-contained thing, and I think that this was actually established when they cast Daniel Craig, is that Daniel Craig's Bond takes place in like an alternate timeline, because especially with the carryover of Judi Dench. So you can look at Daniel Craig's 5 Bond films as this little bubble, this little thing that tells a story that has a beginning. Bond becoming a 00 in Casino Royale, and Bond dying at the end of No Time to Die, and that's how the story concludes. Because we haven't really had an interconnected story like this in the Bond series. This is really the first series of films where the stories have been interconnected and more serialized. So it makes me wonder what they're going to do in the future. When they cast the next actor for Bond, if they're going to make another set of serialized stories for that actor, or if they're going to go back to an anthology-like format that we saw with Connery, Lazenby, Moore, Dalton, and Brosnan. You know, so you reap the benefits of having Daniel Craig as Bond, but you also risk a lot of consequences, because now you kind of risk backing yourself into a corner. And this is probably going to be the biggest talking point of this video, so if I ramble on a lot about this, it's probably going to take up most of the video. I apologize, but this is going to be like probably the biggest chunk of the video, because I already know it's going to be the biggest talking point of the movie, but it's going to be interesting to see how they move forward. I mean, they would have to do, I would believe, like I wouldn't even say soft reboot. I would say they got to do like a hard reboot somehow, but how would they go about that? Because I don't think they would go through the whole, oh, Bond is getting his 00 status again, because we just saw that in Casino Royale 4 films ago. I don't think they would do that again in a movie, and plus 2, there's a Bond video game coming out in the near future where it is a Bond origin story. So, like, do they really want to have a video game that's an origin story and then a movie that's an origin story? I don't think they're going to go down that route. What I would like to see in the future, now that Daniel Craig Bond is dead, like I said, they're obviously going to have to reboot it, but how hard they're going to reboot it, I don't know. But what I would like to see is just have Bond just already in active service and just him be a veteran. You know, I think that that's probably the best way to go down. You can still tap into his personal life and all that and all his personal struggles and demons like that, but I don't think we need like a full-on like, oh, he's gonna go get his 00 status again, and oh, here's how he gets his license to kill. Here's him rising through the rankings of the British Royal Navy. Or we don't need any of that, so I hope they don't go down that route. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the next Bond. If it's going to be serialized, anthology format, I kind of want them to get away from the serialized format for a little bit. Have the next actor or couple of actors do more anthology-like format, and then maybe further down the line do another serialized thing. I mean, the fact that they killed Bond, as I said, is a risky move. It's a ballsy move. Me, personally, I like it because now it does wrap up the story in a way that does feel satisfying, and it makes sense in the long run, even though this whole story arc wasn't planned out. I mean, when you look at it, the line that Bond has in Casino Royale where he says something along the lines of 00s have a very short life expectancy, that kind of played into here because now that's a lot more relevant. And the clues that Bond was going to die were in the movie. So the whole time I was sitting there, when he's wrecking house in Safin's base at the end, I'm like, yeah, oh. In my spoiler-free review, you probably remember me saying that I was kind of like quenching and like my legs were shaking and I got a little weak because that's when I knew Bond was going to die. And there were subtle references in the movie to it. I mean, the opening credits themselves kind of referenced it in the breaking of his relationship with Madeline in this movie as well. We'll talk about that. There's musical cues here that really signal that somebody, either Bond or Madeline or somebody else, is going to die. And it ended up being Bond. One of the pieces of Hans Zimmer's magnificent score, which I didn't even mention in my spoiler review, is that he uses a piece of the On Her Majesty's Secret Service theme. The dun 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 dun, like that. And then at the beginning, when Bond and Madeline are going to Matera, he uses that line from On Her Majesty's Secret Service where he says, "We have all the time in the world." When he said that, I was like, Bond's getting ganked. Here's my thing. While I'm at peace with it, and I think it makes sense, and I'm okay with it, knowing that we are going to get more Bond films and this isn't the end, and they can just do another reboot however they choose to do that. I completely understand if you hate the idea of them killing Bond. This isn't a thing for me where I'm adamant about one perspective like I am with Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. Like, I am certain people are wrong about how they feel about Luke's characterization in The Last Jedi. I feel like people don't understand that sometimes character regression is a needed form of character development, and how they don't understand that 30 years later, Luke Skywalker is not going to be the same character he was in Return of the Jedi. However, with Bond, I can see both sides of the spectrum, which is not how I see it with Luke Skywalker. And I know that there's people who like the Luke Skywalker characterization that can see it both ways. I just can't. I can see both ways of hating that Bond dies or loving that Bond dies in No Time to Die. I completely understand if you are pissed off with this ending, if you are infuriated, mad, whatever, because this is the first time they've actually killed off James Bond in a Bond movie. And there's a couple of thoughts that I have where it can be like, yeah, I understand your argument here. One is Daniel Craig's ego. Was this Daniel Craig's idea? Was this Barbara Broccoli's idea? Was this Michael G. Wilson's idea? Or was this Cary Joji Fukunaga's idea? Where it's like, in order to wrap this storyline up, we have to kill Bond. I think a lot of people are actually going to attribute that to Daniel Craig's ego, because we know that he said some controversial things after Spectre, where he's like, I would rather slit my wrists than play James Bond again. But I mean, he was coming off a grueling production when he made Spectre. The damn dude broke his leg. And so he didn't want to be bothered about talking about another Bond film. So people are honestly going to misconstrue that comment and be like, well, Craig has a big ego, so now that they killed James Bond, everybody's going to attribute to, oh, it's just Craig's ego, and it's making him look like, oh, hey, look, I'm the only Bond that was killed on screen. Look at how important I am. So I understand that the argument is there, that Daniel Craig's Bond compared to the other 5 actors feels a lot more self-important. It's like, oh, hey, look, I'm the one that died. I'm the one that got the storyline. Like, haha, sucks to be you guys. Like, I understand that argument. Another aspect to not liking it that I completely understand is that the Bond series gets trendy, so they follow all the current trends. Like, we see this a lot. We've seen this a lot in recent blockbusters. Like, Logan did this. Logan killed off Wolverine. Terminator Dark Fate killed off John Connor within the first 32 seconds of the movie. And now, No Time to Die kills James Bond. And I can see how people would be like, well, that's a bit trendy. I understand that. I can also see people being completely pissed off at this and saying that it's a slap in the face to 59 years of the Bond legacy on screen. Now that legacy and that history that Bond has in the cinemas is now just kind of evaporated. I am not going to argue with you. So I completely understand if you're on that spectrum. If you're on the spectrum of like, this fucking sucks, like, I don't ever want to see another Bond film again. They spit in the faces of all the fans. They spit on Bond's legacy. They spit on the history of Bond on the big screen, and they just spit in Ian Fleming's face. Like, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but I think the way that they actually do Bond's death is actually really, really good. I guess it's me saying I have mixed emotions, but I'm at peace with it. Like, the way I look at it too is that, well, I mean, the movie's the movie. There's nothing we can do about it. Like, we can't edit out Bond not dying unless if there's an alternate ending on the 4K, which apparently there were 3 or 4 different endings that they filmed. But like, that's kind of how I look at it. When these types of things happen, when movies like this defy expectations and they do things you're not expecting them to do, like subvert expectations, that's what I tell myself. I'm always just like, as someone who loves film, it is good to be challenged and not catered to. And something like Snoke dying in The Last Jedi or Bond dying at the end of this movie is something that is out of my control. Like, no matter how vocal I am about how much I support it or how much I hate it, the movie is the movie. I'm not the one making the movie. I'm not the one writing the script. I'm not the one editing the movie. Like, it's out of my control. That's how I look at it from my end. You can hate it, you can love it, whatever it is. James Bond dies at the end, and people are, and I know another, I guess I can think of actually 1,000 other arguments that you can make in regards to Bond dying, and that people are probably going to make it out to be like it's more like a self-sacrifice type of thing. I guess you could look at it that way, but I never got that vibe. You know what I mean? Because when Bond is at Safin's base in the end, basically what happens is that we'll get there, because I have to explain the plot of No Time to Die in order to get here, because Bond dying is really related to the plot. But before we talk about certain other scenes in the plot, there's also other people, iconic Bond characters that die. Felix Leiter fucking dies. They're really pulling at me. They want to tug on those heartstrings. They're boiling everything up. You know who else dies? Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Well, I mean, that one I saw coming. Like, there's no way around that. I mean, Christoph Waltz only said he would come back to play Blofeld as long as Craig was Bond. So it's like, I really don't see any other avenue you can go down with Blofeld if you're going to keep Blofeld alive. Like, it would be weird if they had kept Blofeld alive and then like, oh, hey, Bond dies, but Blofeld's alive. And Christoph Waltz is still alive as Blofeld. That would have been weird. Like, if Blofeld had just stayed alive and then it's like, oh, Bond dies. Well, would that mean that Blofeld actually got his revenge? Nah, because his whole motivation in Spectre was like, I hate you, Bond. You came into my house and my father treated you like a son. He treated me like shit, so I'm gonna be the author of all your pain, you asshole. He's even up to nefarious things in this movie in his prison cell. So those are the 3 characters that die: Felix Leiter, Blofeld, and Bond himself. Yeah, it's a bit of a, it's tragic. Yeah, Bond dies. Look, I'm releasing this video on the day No Time to Die is released in the US. And I'm filming this video a couple of days after I had seen No Time to Die for the first time. So I've only seen the movie once. This could all change on rewatch. Like, I should probably wait to do this until I watch the movie again. But as much as I'm at peace with Bond dying, you know, it's a shock that they actually went there. Like, they had the balls to kill Bond. And it's not this thing where it's like, oh, it's ambiguous, he might be alive. I'm like, no, the dude got shot like 5 times by Safin. He's poisoned, but the poison doesn't really have to have much to do with like his health. That's just, there's just an aspect where it's like, oh, well, he's poisoned. He's poisoned with this virus thing that we'll eventually talk about. And so now he can't touch people, and I'll get more into that. But it's more of like, oh, hey, like, there's these giant missiles that are coming, and Bond's just standing on top of Safin's base, and these missiles are coming, and yeah, that Bond is like obliterated. He's annihilated. He is a pancake. There's probably, his guts probably went all over the place. Like, it is not ambiguous. Like, you see it. Like, the missiles are coming, they land right in front of Bond, then they land right in back of Bond, and he's just blown to smithereens. It's like, Bond's dead. Shit. So yeah, it's not this ambiguous thing where it's like he could walk out of that alive. Maybe Roger Moore's Bond could walk out of that alive. Maybe Pierce Brosnan's Bond could walk out of that alive. But it's Daniel Craig's Bond here. He is not walking out of that alive. So Bond is confirmed dead. They also do something else that might be controversial with Bond, and that is they give him a daughter. He has a 4-year-old daughter with Madeline. And for a while, Madeline actually writes him off. She's like, no, it's not your daughter. But then they actually did a really good job at editing the trailers, because in the trailers, like those scenes with Safin where Bond is kneeling before Safin, like his daughter Mathilde is actually right next to Safin, which if I were Mathilde, I'd be like, the fuck are you? Let me go chill with my daddy. But like that whole scene in the trailer where Bond's like, history isn't kind to men who play God. Like he's talking to Safin at Safin's base there. Bond's daughter is right next to him, but at that point in the movie, you don't know it's Bond's daughter. Like, there's subtle hints that Safin's giving Bond at that point that it is Bond's daughter, but then when Bond is climbing up, like, the escape shaft at the end, and he's standing on top of the World War II bunker, and he puts Madeline on the line, and he's like, I'm not gonna make it, and that's when she's like, yeah, she's got your eyes, and Bond's like, I know, and that basically confirms, yeah, that's Bond's daughter. It's actually an aspect of Bond that I think is interesting to explore. Like, Bond as a dad, like, there's never, like, Bond as a father. Like, he's a papa. Like, I never thought in a Bond film I would ever watch Bond giving food to a young child and cooking her breakfast right before a car chase. And Mathilde and Madeline are part of that car chase as well, which is interesting that they're a ginormous part of this action scene. So that was unexpected, something I actually really loved, because if Bond falls in love with, again, another point of contention is that Bond marries Madeline at the beginning of it. Well, they're already married at the beginning of Matera. So it's like, yeah, if they're married, and then they split up for 5 years, and Mathilda's 5, I don't know how, I'm going to keep saying her name differently. It's Mathilde, I don't know. The movie says it differently. It would make sense within the time frame that is Bond's kid. I'm okay with that. It's not just like, here's this girl, Bond, dumped on your lap. It's like, no, here's this girl, Bond, dumped on your lap. It's not like we see Bond chilling in domestic life or anything. It's like, no, he's literally in Norway for one reason and one reason only. And then, oh, hey, here's this kid that is not your kid, but is your kid, and we're just gonna get into a giant car chase. So you don't see much domestic life with Bond and Mathilde, but an interesting aspect to take with Bond and Madeline and their relationship, and they have a lot more chemistry in here than they do in Spectre. Like, a lot of people have complained that the chemistry between Bond and Madeline and Spectre is virtually non-existent. That's all fixed in this movie, and thank God. They gave Léa Seydoux a lot more to do in this movie. They made Madeline a little bit more mysterious and a little less mysterious at the same time. So let's talk about some of the plot. The big secret that Madeline has been hiding this whole time, that the trailers have been teasing, actually isn't as big of a secret as the trailers make it out to be. So that might be a little bit disappointing for many people. This whole big secret is displayed in the opening scene. The opening scene of the movie is Safin walking across a deserted forest to a young Madeline's house. Madeline is playing games with her mother. Her mother is falling asleep on the couch. And then all of a sudden, we have the most scary, haunting, disturbing, creepiest scene ever in a Bond film. This is the closest a Bond film is ever going to get to a horror movie, and that Safin just comes into her house. First, he pops up at the window, and he's wearing that creepy-ass mask that he is wearing in the trailers. The moment he steps into their house, Madeline goes into hiding, but then Safin comes into the house. and he sees Madeline's mother there on the couch, and there's this like distant shot of Safin just coming in slowly, and it's just a full body, like a distant shot, but it's like slowly focusing on him as he's coming in, similar to like the Javier Bardem shot in Skyfall where he first enters. Safin literally comes in, you just see that mask, and you're like, fuck. I would duck and run if I saw that mask. But then the moment he talks, is Mr. White home? Like, that's just even scary too. His voice in the fucking mask. And you find out he's there. He's like, Mr. White killed my family. What do you want from my... And he just murders Madeline's mother, and Madeline looks on in horror, and then she runs upstairs. Safin runs upstairs. Madeline grabs a gun from under her bed. Safin tries to shoot her. She shoots him about like 7 or 8 times, breaks part of the mask. She's trying to dispose of the body, but then Safin wakes up, and he chases her across the lake, and she falls into the lake, and for some reason, Safin doesn't kill her. He actually saves her life. So I don't know really what that was about. The trailers really hint that he's in love with Madeline Swan, but I didn't really get that vibe from the movie. And then it cuts to Bond and Madeline and Matera. And I actually think that the stuff in Italy is really good because we actually get some closure with Bond and Vesper. How he's still heartbroken over how she betrayed him in Casino Royale, or he thinks she betrayed him in Casino Royale. And so it's all of Madeline's idea to have Bond go to her tombstone because she's buried in Matera. So Bond actually goes to her tombstone, and Madeline tells him, she's like, in order for us to be together, you have to move on. You have to forgive yourself. You have to forgive her. It's not her fault. And so we actually get a lot of closure there. And again, this movie has a lot of callbacks to previous Bond films. Like, when Bond is visiting Vesper's tombstone, he says, I miss you. You hear Vesper's theme from Casino Royale playing. It honestly it touched my heart. I was like, this is going to be the best James Bond movie ever. But then her tomb blows up and Bond is like susceptible that Madeline is behind the attack when it's actually really Blofeld. And so then it leads to this long chase of Matera, and then Bond's just like, yeah, fuck you, Madeline. I'm going my own separate ways. You're going your own separate way. I never want to see you again. You betrayed me. Thank you. Thank you. And then we lead into the opening credits. But like, I'm happy that we finally got some closure for Bond with Vesper. He went from loving Vesper to the end of Casino Royale where he's like, the bitch is dead, to wanting revenge for her death, to completely just like, almost in a way like passing her over, or for trying to forget about her in Spectre when he came across the interrogation tape in Mr. White's safe room. And now this movie's saying, okay, Bond still has some personal demons there, so exercise those demons, forgive yourself, and understand that it's not entirely her fault. And that was excellent. I thought everything that harkened back to Casino Royale, even to Spectre, I thought was done really well. Let's talk about Spectre for a minute. Like, not the movie, but like the organization Spectre that is reintroduced in Spectre, that is led by Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Like, one of my favorite parts of the movie. There's this point in the movie where Bond has to meet with Paloma, who's Ana de Armas, and they infiltrate like a Spectre party. This is where people will probably be like, what are we doing? Like, is this a Roger Moore or Bond movie or a Brosnan Bond movie? Because there's literally, like, they infiltrate the Spectre meeting, and there's this bionic eye that is watching everybody at the Spectre meeting, and is Blofeld, like, you can hear Blofeld over a loudspeaker. He's like, this is a trap, James Bond. So it's like, oh, Blofeld's doing this from his prison cell. Oh, that's interesting. And so it's like, oh, like, Bond and Paloma just walked into a trap, but, like, it's weird though, because Blofeld set up this trap so that they get killed, but then Safin re-engineers this trap so that he kills everybody in Spectre. There's two great ideas here. One, the fact that everybody in this party is all a member of Spectre and they're all meeting to celebrate something, and then they all just get taken out. Like, Safin is on a revenge mission. He dismantles Spectre. That is a really good idea, and people are going to be like, well, he dismantles Spectre a little bit too quick, or Spectre's just out of the picture. I think Spectre was going to be out of the picture anyways. I mean, you can bring Spectre back in future Bond films, but I don't think you're going to bring him back, like, I don't think you're going to reintroduce him like this. I mean, you have to reintroduce a new Blofeld, since Blofeld dies. But I think dismantling Spectre and having all of Spectre just dead was how this was going to end. Like, Spectre is completely obliterated at the end of this movie. And other than Blofeld, in this moment, everybody in Spectre dies. Like, this was literally supposed to be a trap for Bond. This leads to a really awesome shootout, but that's not the only good part of this scene. What I think is the best part of this scene is that this is a Spectre meeting that is actually a birthday party for their imprisoned leader, Blofeld. I just find that funny. They're just holding a birthday party and he's just watching them through this bionic eye that's part of Primo's eye. Primo's the guy that was chasing Bond and Matera. So he's not only Blofeld's henchman, he's also Safin's henchman. In order to actually explain why Bond survives this, we have to talk about the plot. So the plot of No Time to Die revolves around DNA coding. So there's like this project that M commissioned back in the day about DNA coding and like DNA sequencing. I think I'm getting this right because the movie doesn't really do a good job at explaining it, but I don't really care. But so there's he's commissioned this project called Project Heracles that he has swept under the rug at MI6. It's a super secret MI6 project that nobody else knows about. It's off the books. And so he commissioned it for a different use than what it's being used for in this movie. And Safin has his own men kidnap a scientist named Oberchev who reverse engineers this Project Heracles. So now like it includes nanobots. So it's like this virus that's in your DNA, but like the way that this virus spreads is that it's coded to your DNA. So if you touch somebody with like your genetic code, you kill them. So this is how Safin sabotages that Spectre party. And then eventually we find out that Safin wants to blackmail Madeline into killing Blofeld because Blofeld, while he's in prison, won't talk to anybody other than Madeline. So in order for Safin to kill Blofeld, he's gonna have Madeline infect herself with the virus so that when she touches Blofeld, it actually kills him. Honestly, the plot is like the most absurd thing ever. It's nonsensical. It's beyond ridiculous. And it's one of those Bond plots that asks you to just roll with it. It doesn't really, it's like, yeah, we're not going to really attempt to explain it because we know it's stupid, but you just got to roll with it. So you have to take a leap of faith, like almost every Bond plot. And so Bond tells M, and Bond gets pissed at M. He's like, you had this thing commissioned. What is your problem, man? Like, what is your problem? You're literally spreading a virus around, and M's like, this is not what it was meant for, like it was meant for something else. Bond's like, all right, I gotta go speak to Blofeld. He gets into the prison cell that Blofeld is in, and he doesn't realize that Madeline's there, but Madeline is part of the interrogation with him, and Bond touches Madeline on the hand, so he unknowingly infects himself with the virus. And so when he's trying to get information from Blofeld and Blofeld's not budging, this is where I'm like, holy shit, Bond is literally going to extremes to get what he needs in this movie. There are so many sequences where he does this, but this is the one where I'm like, whoa. And I really go back and forth between whether or not this is the best scene in the movie, or if the opening with Safin killing Madeline's mother and going to her house is the best scene in the movie. But Bond is just like, all right, that's it. He chokes Blofeld. He's about to kill him. And then he realizes what he's going to do. And the way they actually film this is actually really smart because Bond is just looking at it like, oh shit, I almost killed Blofeld. But then he kind of looks at Blofeld's cell and it's like, and I was thinking to myself, Blofeld just escaped, didn't he? He's out of there. Like he figured out a way to escape. And the way that they actually have like the camera set up, see like the side of his like prison cell. So it's like, you can partially see like inside like this little like tube thing he's in. And you can't see Blofeld. So that's what got me thinking Blofeld escaped. But then after it shows Bond look at him, you see that Bond has infected Blofeld with the virus and Blofeld is dead. So that's how Blofeld dies. And so how Felix dies, you're probably wondering how Felix dies. Well, Felix has Bond go and try and track down this scientist, and Felix is working with this dude named Logan Ash, who's played by Billy Magnuson. And Logan Ash is, yeah, he's a traitor. I mean, look at his character poster. This dude is up to no good. It was so obvious he was going to be working with Safin or a member of Spectre. And so Logan Ash is the one that kills Felix later. And getting to the end, we find out that like Safin wants to like mass produce this Project Heracles release virus so that he can kill millions. That's been one complaint I've seen with Safin, and the fact that he's actually not in the movie all that much. But like his motivations are like, oh, people want oblivion and I can be like their invisible god. I can wipe out all of humanity and claim humanity for myself or something and be like the one and only one people look up to. I'm like, yeah, this dude has a god complex. He thinks he's a hero and he's not. His motivation also revolves around the fact that Mr. White and killed his family. Like, Spectre ordered his family to be killed, and that's why he was going after Mr. White, and that's why he kills every member of Spectre. Like, that's why Spectre is dismantled. But we find out that, like, he has this, like, poison garden, and in order to stop, like, the mass producing of this virus, Bond and Nomi, who's played by Lashana Lynch, who I think is really good in the movie, by the way. She's not in it as much as I thought she would be, and everybody's gonna come up with all these, like, oh, gone woke, and ugh, like, I hate that word, like, ugh, I can't believe I even just said that word. That's clearly not what happens. Yes, she's 007, but she says it's just a number, and she reassigns it to Bond towards the end of the movie, but Bond and Nomi team up, and what they have to do is that they have to get on the horn with M, who has this fleet of like British Royal Navy ships, and they have to shoot missiles at Safin's base on this island. It's like this old World War II bunker. In order to do that, they have to open up the doors to the missile silos so that they stay open, so that they actually blow up what he deems his poison garden. Safin ends up closing those, and then Bond has to go and find Safin, and then this leads to a brutal ass fight. Like, Bond is not having it. He gets shot a couple times by Safin. He got shot like 3 times. I'm like, yeah, Bond's dying. There's no coming back. Like, if he somehow survives 3 bullet holes, this dude is God. This dude is more of a god than Safin will ever think he is. Bond and Safin go at it, and then Safin tells Bond, it's like, well, you're in the poison garden. You're now infected. You can't get it off of you, so if you touch Madeline and Mathilde ever again, you're gonna kill them. And this enrages Bond, and Bond just breaks Safin's arm, and it's like, oh! Damn! Like, that is brutal. There are some brutal fight scenes in here. And Safin's just laying on the ground, and Bond just grabs the gun and executes him at point-blank range, and Safin's dead. Thank God. You know what? I will say this. Thank God. If you're gonna kill Bond, thank God Bond got the chance to kill Safin. Because could you imagine, throughout 5 films, if Daniel Craig's Bond only killed one of the villains? In Casino Royale, he doesn't kill Le Chiffre. Mr. White kills Le Chiffre. In Quantum of Solace, he leaves Dominic Green out in the middle of a desert with nothing but a can of motor oil for him to drink, and we find out through a passing line of dialogue later that an unknown assailant came around and shot Dominic Green. At the end of Spectre, lets Blofeld get arrested and imprisoned by M. The only villain he's killed in his movies up to this point was Silva in Skyfall, and even that felt a little anticlimactic because he throws a knife into Silva's back. And after everything that he and M go through in that movie, that's how Silva goes out. Like, yeah, sure, I guess. Like, yeah, kind of a little anticlimactic, but like, this fight is brutal. And this feels a bit anticlimactic as well, but I'm like, you know what? It's satisfying because at least Bond killed Safin. At least that's all I wanted. I was like, if Daniel Craig is going out in this movie, if this is his last one, if this is his swan song, he has to kill the villain, and they let him kill the villain before he dies. And that's what, and he signals to Emmy, he's like, you gotta shoot the missiles at the island. And everybody's like, Bond, you're still on the island. He's like, you shoot the missiles. I don't give a shit. I'm not making it out of here alive. And that's when Bond dies. A lot of what I said actually really sounds ridiculous because it's like I'm kind of backtracking on my review where I'm like, yeah, it was an A+. I think it's an A+ imperfect movie, you know, like you can nitpick this movie to death. But, like, yeah, there's stuff where I'm like, maybe thinking about it now, not so great, but it's not terrible either. Like, people who are mad that Bond dies, like, they've done worse. Like, if I had to pick between we're gonna kill Bond or we're gonna send Bond to space, I'd be like, yeah, just fucking kill Bond. Like, don't send him to space. Just kill Bond. Do it. I don't care. Just do it. That's a lot better than sending him to space like they did in Moonraker. There's gonna be a lot of references that big fans of the series are gonna pick up on. A lot of references to Dr. No, which, by the way, Safin is not Dr. No. So I just wanna Want to clear that space up right there. He is not Dr. No. Thank God, because I want them to do their own thing with the villains now. Reimagining villains. It works with Blofeld, but it would not have worked with Dr. No. They took elements from the Dr. No novel and the You Only Live Twice novel, and that's actually another thing you could say about Bond dying that could be a positive. It's like, well, he died in the novels and then he came back in the next one. Yeah, so, I mean, Ian Fleming even killed him in the novels, so I feel like I've said all I've had to say about No Time to Die. A lot of it rests on the fact that Bond dies at the end. And how the reception towards that is going to be, no clue. But I can see both ends of the argument, and I think that's going to cause this movie to be divisive and polarizing. And some other decisions that they make with Bond, like him having a daughter, or him getting married to Madeline, when there wasn't that much chemistry between him and Madeline and Spectre. And I think it's those two combined with the big one of Bond dying is going to get people talking for a while. So it's going to be interesting to see how receptive fans are to that idea of Bond dying. They even play We Have All the Time in the World during the end credits. And Madeline survives the whole movie. I guess to cap it off, is that I knew either Bond or Madeline was going to die, and I thought it was going to be Madeline for a while there. Like, the way Blofeld looks at Madeline when Bond walks off with her at the end of Spectre is like, I'm going to try and kill you. So I thought that they were going to do somewhat of a soft remake of On Her Majesty's Secret Service where Madeline may have gotten ganked before the pre-title sequence, and that would have been the pre-title sequence. It was like Madeline's death. And then Bond reeling with that, him having to stop this diabolical plot from Blofeld, who probably escaped prison. I feel like people are expecting Blofeld to escape prison in this. I will say, this movie did what Avengers Endgame did for me, was that there were things I expected going into Endgame. Some of it didn't happen, most of it did, and I walked out satisfied. No Time to Die. There were things I was expecting to happen in No Time to Die. Some of it didn't happen. Most of it did. I walked out satisfied. I think the consensus is that this is going to be the third best Daniel Craig Bond film. And it's not to take anything away from this movie. That is just Casino Royale and Skyfall are already so good, they're hard to top. It's not hard to top Spectre, and it's definitely not hard to top Quantum of Solace. I guess that's how I can wrap this all up. It's the third best Daniel Craig movie. It's a satisfying swan song, and we'll see what the reception is towards Bond's death. Something we have never seen on screen before. So that's all I have to say about No Time to Die. What did you guys think about No Time to Die? Drop me some feedback in the comment section below. I'll leave my link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.